into the lecture this week. Started off too far ahead. Okay, so will the old media last? Will books and libraries endure, or will they fall to the wayside? Think about 100 years from now. What will libraries look like? Even in the Rutgers library, the first floor, I don't think even has any books. It's just like computer chairs, desks, computer silent rooms, lounge chairs, desk with adapters and things like that. I highly doubt it looked like that even 20 years ago. So what will a library look like 100 years from now? Will it just be huge data banks, databases, and computers? And these are just questions for you to think about. You know, we can have discussion in class. What will happen to all the old forms of media, all the books, films, letters? I know for me, I still have all the books, but my DVDs are somewhere, threw some away. I don't really need the DVDs. Like I might watch one or two every few years, but I can just go to Netflix and other online things and look it up. And I put this thing of Wall-E here. If you don't know Wall-E, it's a Disney movie where the robot goes back to a deserted Earth. And theoretically, what would Wall-E see if he came back? You know, whatever year the movie was based in, would he find libraries of books? Moving on. So I mentioned this in the other class, in the other video lecture about these reference desk things. So let's say you wanted to find a book about, TikTok doesn't work. I know you want to find the history of the Rutgers buses 20 years ago. So you would have to go look, okay, buses, letter B, then look on this thing, Rutgers, and then go through it, find the card. The card will tell you what floor, what shelf it's on, and you have to go look for it. And guess what? It's not there. Somebody misplaced it. You're screwed. Go to another library and check it out. We don't do this anymore. Have you guys done this? I don't remember me doing this. Maybe when I was a kid, like as soon as computers came out, they tried to digitize this because it was a pain. In rare instances, some of you might have to, as we'll look later on in the lecture about rare books and things like that, and things that are not online. Another thing that doesn't exist anymore. I'll let this load here. Microfilm. Do you guys know what microfilm is? It was a way to store and digitize old newspapers. So basically, there's a roll of film, like the old film strips from the cameras that you had to develop. And if you wanted to find something, you had to go through the year, look for the month, a whole bunch of drawers. If you can see in this picture, on the left-hand side of the picture was tons of drawers stacked full of microfilm. And then you had to actually scroll through, because the microfilm would probably be like a whole month. You have to scroll through to find the article here and there. And I remember doing this. This was in 2014. I worked in the Connecticut Post. I had to find an article. So there was this like weird thing about the Warrens, the ghost hunters, and this guy was writing a book, and my boss wanted me to check it out. And it was said like the most believable thing that the chairs were moving in the house. So I wanted to go to the microfilm of that event and find the people. So I had to find their names, wrote all the names down, plugged it into a database. I could not reach anybody. All right, moving on. So the traditional role of libraries was to collect and organize knowledge artifacts. Organization allows us to find and retrieve what we are looking for. That's why those cards were there. And moving on, will digital information survive? What's going to happen in 100 years with your digital information? I can tell you right now, not even less than 10 years ago, I was using floppy disks. So I was bored. I had a summer job in a hospital where I would register patients, and we couldn't do anything because they blocked the internet, and they didn't let us use our phones. So what I would do is like write things, like board, on a floppy disk. I actually found those disks the other day, but will they even work? How am I gonna get that read? Maybe I could probably buy a thing that could transfer it or go to some computer shop and do that, but that's becoming less and less accessible. What about USB drives? I mean, the new computers, my MacBook that I'm recording this on is fairly old. The new computers only have one USB-C drive, and if you can easily get an adapter, but it's becoming less and less available. And the reason why that's happened is because everything has transformed into the cloud. So what if we store all our information in the cloud? And what if, is that going to survive? What if there's a hack and they delete everything? What if that goes down? What if it's deleted by some chance? I know I have thousands of photos from traveling and I've left it on the cloud. I haven't backed it up. If you guys read the optional reading, there was a reading that said how to do this stuff so it doesn't disappear. But I should do that. I should buy an external hard drive and share and download those photos on this computer and that hard drive. I haven't done that, which is risky. Actually, I had a situation where I just figured out um, iPhone 7 or one of the iPhone 6S's, they had the new thing that you can sort of see the frame moving before or after you take the picture. And Google Drive didn't recognize that when I stored my photos. So that was a big thing where I just finally figured out that I could just download them as MP4s and watch them. So what is this going to look like in the future? And how do we organize digital media? How do we find things online? We use metadata. So watch this video here, metadata.
Hi, and welcome to the video series 5-Minute Metadata, where we will be walking you through all there is to know about metadata. To get started, let's answer the question, what is metadata? You might have heard it referred to as data about data, but when the term data can mean different things to different people, what does that actually mean? To answer this, let's talk about two different kinds of metadata, descriptive and structural, and how they relate to one another. Descriptive metadata relates to a piece of information and gives you extra detail about it, for example, a title of a picture, whereas structural metadata relates to many things and tells you how similar bits of information are stored and what they mean. To explore this in more detail, let's look at some pictures I took and some of their metadata. Let's look at some things about this photo I might want to know to understand it better. This first one was taken in New York while I was on a camping trip. It was taken at 4 p.m. and it had an exposure time of 2 seconds on the camera.
You can do that right now. If you go to your phone and look at your photos, it'll tell you all of that information.
Now let's have a look at a different photo. This one was taken in Florida while I was on vacation. It was taken at 10 a.m. and the f-stop was set at 3.5. The descriptive metadata is changing because the picture has changed. Let's have a look at one last photo. This one was taken in Wisconsin at my house. It was taken at 12 p.m. and the exposure of the camera was set at 1/10 of a second. The descriptive metadata has changed for all three photos. This is because the descriptive metadata is unique to them, but the structural metadata has stayed the same for all three photos. You've just seen 3 photos in my photo library. Now, let's put the information about them into a table. This is so I can search through them. But I don't have a lot of space, so I'm going to abbreviate some of them. I'm going to record a few extra photos I took. You'll notice all of the photos have similar information about them, a location, a time taken, and something about the camera. To make sense of all of this, I need to know what all of these columns mean. To make sure someone who sees this data can understand it, they need to know what it means, including the idea it's recording, such as the exposure time, and what its value is being recorded in, such as the number of seconds, the time it was recorded, in hours and minutes, and location as the US state name. By recording this information and linking it, I've recorded the structural metadata that describes this table to allow people to understand it. To sum it all up, how do you know if you're dealing with structural or descriptive metadata? We know that all sorts of files have metadata, including photos, music, spreadsheets, and even this video you're watching. Descriptive metadata is information that tells you things such as who made the file, when it was made, where it was made, and how big it is. And structural metadata applies to lots of files and helps you interpret data by describing what fields mean, even if this is describing descriptive metadata. Now you know what structural and descriptive metadata are and the differences between them. If you'd like to know more, please visit us at Aristotle Metadata.
All right, moving on. Is anybody here that edits video? As part of my grad school training, we had to learn how to shoot, edit, and tag data. And tagging, the videos is painstaking. I mean, if you are starting off in video editing, your internship will probably be just tagging. I've seen some side jobs where you can just tag the videos because it takes so long. Think about a documentary on Netflix and all the scenes that they shoot. They'd have to tag it to sort of find the right clips, and that takes a long time. You have to break up the clips, tag them. It takes forever. That's what kind of got me away from video editing, because I actually like to be in the field instead of just being in an office tagging videos. Okay, we're going to talk about the 4 changes to information technology. The first one was that humans learned to write. This happened around 4000 BC, around Mesopotamia. And why was that? It was because the human race was evolving and they needed to keep track of the livestock and the trades. So I have 20 cows, you have 40 sheep. Let's trade and let me keep track of it. Then we have hieroglyphics, excuse me, in 3200 BC and 1000 BC, the alphabet was created to sort of simplify all the languages and letters that were going around. The most important technological breakthrough in the history of humanity was when humans learned to write. Remember, technology doesn't have to be digital tech. Tech is just something that evolved and betters the human race. So the wheel was a form of technology. The car was a form of technology. Digital tech, when we talk about tech, is computer things. And we would have nothing if it wasn't for humans didn't learn how to write. Think if that was pushed back. If we didn't even learn how to write, we couldn't even establish computers and things like that. The second thing was when scrolls to the left became books on the right. Oh, moving too far ahead. And with the ease and durability of books, it helped spread Christianity. Books were handwritten at this time, and reading and writing was kept among the Catholic Church and the wealthy. It was a tool of power. Information is always power. Number 3 was the printing press. It was invented by Johannes Gutenberg in 1450s. Let's be very clear here. Types of printing presses had been invented beforehand in China and Korea, thousands of years before Gutenberg, in 1045 and 1230 respectively. And there's some discussion if Gutenberg knew about this and ripped it off. There's some discussion if he had traveled to Asia or the Middle East and knew about it. But anyway, his invention spread throughout the West and literally changed the world. Not literally, it changed the world. Because of the printing press, you could print books. They were not handwritten. You could print a bunch of books way quicker. Even though if you look at it, you can Google it on YouTube. Sorry, not Google. You can YouTube it. You can see what a printing press looks like. You have to put the letters and close the thing and stamp it out, and it's one page. That's way quicker than somebody writing it by hand. And it made books more accessible. It made them cheaper. And because of this, the reading public grew, literacy and education expanded into what we have today. And books weren't only for the cheap. Books only weren't for the rich anymore. They became so cheap that you could have penny books. You could have books that were like small and things like that, and about different types of ideas, not mainly the Bible. Another big thing that came out of this was that newsletters could spread ideas. So instead of printing a whole book, let's just print the page and let's literally spread them all over, door to door. And the first time this was used was in Martin Luther used it for the Protestant movement and Reformation. And he helped spread the ideas against the Catholic Church, and it was easy and cheap. Finally, we have electronic communication, and the first date was 1974. This was the start of the internet between universities. Remember the difference between the terms internet and the web. Internet is connecting to computers from one location and the other, and the web is the actual websites. That came about in 1991. So when you look at the succession of how this happened between the first thing, 1000 BC to 1450, and 1450 to 1974, and things like that, it's happening super fast, from hundreds, thousands of years to hundreds of decades. Let's look back even 10 years ago where the technology was and see how far it advanced. It's come a long way. And some of you may have been too small to really remember these things. I realize how young you guys are. So um, they're all around now. The iPad first came out in 2010. And we have so many tablets now. It's incredible. But the iPad, excuse me, was really like the first like one. iPhone 4, groundbreaking. iPhone 4, we're on 12 already. We'll skip that. The Android really arrives. I mean, you're either Android or Apple. So it was even 10 years ago, that was a new thing. And I actually had this cell phone here. Windows came out with a phone. BlackBerry was still going strong. I had a BlackBerry as well. Nokia sort of went to the wayside. 3D TV. I remember somebody in my family had a 3D TV, but it didn't really work. Like the glasses, and there wasn't enough programs supported from it. Streaming revolution started. Netflix started to come out and grow at that year. And Microsoft had some weird thing to connect, try to battle with the Wii and PlayStation Move, but those didn't really take off. And social media started to come out more and more on the smartphone. It was always online, things like Instagram and stuff like that. So see how far we've come in just 10 years and where we're going to be in 10 more years. Elon Musk is trying to do like some company where you can implant. It's a real thing. You can look it up. I forgot the name. I think it's called Neuralink, where you can like sort of this futuristic thing where you can just get the information straight into your brain. So we have millions and millions of blogs. There's tons of information that can be created about anyone out there. People have to be careful. Any fans of The Onion? It's a spoof website that just makes fun of things that are happening in real life politics. It's not real. Everybody knows that it's fake, and it has funny things. This one talks about people playing with leaves, girlfriend doing something with leaves outside, probably jumping in them. Let's see. White House vows to have something to stick into your arm by October. It's based on real-time events or popular things that are happening, but it's not real. I mean, most people will know that these things aren't real. So unfortunately, in China, they printed something. Oh, it's not working. All right. So there was this article in The Onion that made fun of Congress because they never get anything done. And the article said that Congress is not going to approve any bills in 2008, or I think it was 2002, unless they get a new Capitol building with a retractable dome. And the South China Post, an actual newspaper, legitimate newspaper, took that from The Onion and posted it. And they had to apologize and like backtrack, like, oh, we didn't know. That's a big F up. So news gatherings, we're talking about news. News clips are not a primary source of what happened. It's not a first-hand account. Instead, they are a telling of events of what happened. It's somebody's telling of events. And journalists try to tell it as accurately as they can, but there's a lot of different things. And this is what you're really going to be working on for the paper, which is going to start in week 5. So different outlets can tell the story way differently. Not all info could be available at the time. Again, let's say there's a fire in Rutgers, whatever building. Right now, there's very minimal information. If my deadline is, let's say it's Tuesday night at 12, I'm not gonna have the same info as a news reporter there on the scene tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And reporters have to deal with a lot of restraints from writing. We have word counts, we have deadlines, as I mentioned before, and this chaos. It's hard to make sense of scenes that are happening. I've dealt with shootings with huge fires, like factory 5-alarm, 6-alarm fires. You can see from miles and miles away from the highway, and even the officials, the people that we turn to as reporters, don't know what's going on, and I have to make sense of it. So I have to interview the bystanders. I have to interview the fire chief, the police department, PIO, things like that. That's public information officer. And Dart, it's interesting. Just a side note here. Darton mentions in one of the readings, the old way of news gathering, which was literally you had to go to the police station and look through reports. I don't know if they do this anymore, but I had to do this when I became a reporter in Bridgeport, Connecticut, my first full-time job. And it was cool because you kind of get to know the cops and they know you and you get little tidbits like, oh, check that. And that's how the older reporters got in to get things that, nobody else knew. They befriend the reporters, the cops there, and they'll be like, hey, can I take you out for a coffee? Or they'll go to a cop. There's always a cop bar next to any police station. They'll literally go to the cop bar and be like, hey, can I buy you a beer? Can you tell me about this? And yeah, the police would send us press releases about big things that happen, but they wouldn't tell us everything. So we would go there and check it out, and we'll walk in there. I remember all the time. Also, we still do this with civil cases. So if you don't know, court is divided. I think there's three. There's criminal court if you do a crime. There's family court if you need to get a divorce or do child support or anything like that. And then there's civil court where you do lawsuits. So civil court would be an you wanted to sue Rutgers, or me and you got into a crash and you want to sue me for insurance. There's literally, we'll go to the court. Hey, I'm from NJ.com. Go into I forgot the Patterson federal court in Patterson, whatever. I don't remember the county right now. And then I would go in through an office to the back. They would literally hand me folders of files. There'll be files. And it was this crazy thing where it's just a wall with like stacks. And it was so packed that you had to like move the wall over and look through. So like when I started, I had to start this by date. So just go in and look it up. And most of it is like, hey, a guy slipped in A&P or Stop and Shop and he wants to sue the supermarket for a couple thousand and get some money. But every once in a while, you find something big. And I would find like, I think Little Kim got sued, or there was a fight outside a club or some crazy thing like that. And little by little, that's going away. When I was there, there was this older man who would go and do the same thing for LexisNexis, which is a database company, and people would pay to have that access to get those reports. So let's talk about misinformation. One way to examine how newspapers got it wrong is to look at Revolutionary War news that was printed in both England and, let's just say France at the time. First, it took weeks to get across the Atlantic. Remember, it took 7 to 8 weeks. And then it was reprinted and copied from paper to paper. So the Daily News took it from the Post took it from the Maryland Baltimore Sun took it from the Washington Post, took it from the New York Times. That's kind of what we do now, but we attribute and we link back. But back then, which they don't do now, they changed, tweaked, added, subtracted, and the whole story changed. To give you an example of how absurd it was, according to these newspapers, Benedict Arnold was declared dead 26 times. He could only die one time, by the way. And the public had a mistrust in these papers because of how badly this reprinting was. This sort of thing happened with books as well. And the reading talks about a collector of first edition Shakespeare books and why that's so important. Some people think, oh, it's just being nitpicky. Why would you even care to look at that? But these things were happening in the book world. Same thing with the newspapers. I don't know if you know copyright laws. If I create a book, you just can't copy it and print it. I can sue you for money. My publisher can sue you for money. Same thing with anything that's created, art, an invention, music, whatever. So before copyright laws were established and books, in the Shakespeare time, people were always trying to reprint the books for money. Hey, let's reprint the new Shakespeare book on the low and we'll sell it in the side of the road, for $5 instead of 20. And when they did this, again, they added, subtracted, they changed, and it made everything a mess. So first edition books help people and scholars identify what the author really intended to write. And even authors like Voltaire would change his books himself with each reprint. The book mentions that Voltaire's followers said they're not buying any copies until he dies because he's going to keep changing it. So this misinformation, the internet makes this worse in a way. It's faster to spread lies. Things are shared. Things are speculated. Things are retweeted. And it gets crazy. So because of that, I'll go back to that part. I want to show you a silly example of how fast these things can happen and how absurd. Shortly after Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Supreme Court Justice, passed away on, I think it was Friday or Thursday, there was a viral post claiming that she was already dead and that it was a clone or a body double so the Democrats could hold on to the vote after the election. This is insane. To me, it's insane that this newspaper had to do a fact check. Obviously, that's not real. Come on. And that spread up quickly. Person died like 2 hours. They're already spreading lies about them. And that's silly, but this can get dangerous. Spreading the misinformation fastly can get really dangerous. There was a false tweet on Twitter right when everything was getting crazy with the coronavirus that New York was going to go to a complete lockdown. We haven't had a lockdown here like other countries. A lockdown like other countries, like let's say China or in Europe, they were homebound. They couldn't go anywhere. I know now in Dominican Republic and in Ecuador, they have this thing where you can leave for a couple hours a day. You're not home, you're gonna get arrested or get a ticket. Sorry, I need to pause this.
7% against 1600, almost 1,700 points.
All right. Anyway, so people went nuts. People started to flood the supermarkets. Oh my God, I can't leave my house. I need to get enough water, toilet paper, and things like that. The police department and Mayor de Blasio of New York City had to tweet out, this is not true. But think about how bad it can get. You can get a scenario, people are fleeing, stampedes, riot, like all this crazy stuff could happen because of that. And it got really, luckily it didn't get dangerous, but it had the potential to be dangerous. And public officials have to, go out and tell them, hey, like I showed you guys with the wildfire, the cops are saying, hey, this is not true. It's crazy, but a lot of people, they see this on Twitter and Facebook, they think it's true. They won't even, hopefully by you taking this class, you already know, hey, let me look up the mayor's page. Let me look up the police department's page. But a lot of people won't, and they take what they see online as fact when they should do research. Let me close this because that brings me to the point here. With the internet, we need to look at information as a different sort of model. It's not a linear path of facts that are 100%. It's this sort of blob of information that's changing and being reshaped. And we need to study carefully with a skeptical eye. Also with the understanding that things could change. Yes, that was a scary time. I remember I was in the gym and it was like Tom Hanks has coronavirus. There's no NBA going on. This thing is getting locked down. Whatever. And it was like, holy crap, should I be at the gym right now if this is that bad? And I think that was the last time I went to the gym. That was in, I think, March 15th or one of those days. And it's easy to believe at that point what's going on, but things are going to change. There's a lot of things in breaking news situations, and you have to be skeptical, do your research, and with the understanding that when you look up the new facts, it might change even from official sources. Newspapers get it wrong. They have to do corrections. I don't know if you guys see, you go to a newspaper, it says update. This was clarified by the mayor at 4 p.m. Originally, we posted this. So Google, in 2006, Google reached an agreement with 5 of the top research libraries to put the material online. Over time, more research libraries joined that Google initiative, and lots of other databases went on as well. Here's a quote from a Washington Post article about the coronavirus lockdown and people joining these databases. The Library of Congress offers a selection of free classics you can read online. Many of the choices are kid and adventure-oriented, like Jack and the Beanstalk. The Cambridge University Press made more than 700 textbooks free by the end of May, but the demand was so high their website crashed. But here's an important note that the reading brings up. Even if Google was so successful as to put 90% or even 95% of all those scholarly articles online, there's probably a percentage, even a small percentage, 2 or 3%, that aren't online. And we still have to go to that library and get those reference cards and do that. And that small percentage could be really important. It could be crucial. So depending on the information or research that you're doing, you might actually have to go to the library. Even if you've got most of it online, you might have to do some library research, which I've had to do as a journalist to get books and those microfilms that I showed you. So here's a correlation to a pop culture example. Any Game of Thrones fans, Sam, he wanted to study in the Citadel, how do we kill the White Walkers? So let's say in some weird mashup that Sam was in this day and age and he was scanning online all these databases, how to kill the White Walkers, but that one book that talked about Dragonglass was not online. The Jon Snow and everybody else would have been screwed. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Let's go back to last week's class, check the Game of Thrones Wikipedia. But here's an interesting thing. What if Google is replaced someday? Or what if it goes down? What happens in 100 years if there's another site? I mean, look at when we look at MySpace. It's completely gone. What information, I don't know if you guys are in the MySpace era, what information that's lost forever is in MySpace pages? Facebook is slowly, it's still a juggernaut, but it's slowly fading to TikTok and Instagram. And hey, next year, something could come out and wipe that out. So what if that happens to Google? What if we start using another database, another website? There was a Google search engine that I used to use before Google. I cannot remember the name. Maybe Earthlink, or I don't even remember because that's that long ago. Here's an analogy. You guys ever had to do a paper or research and Canvas or the Blackboard website is down? And you're like, okay, my paper is due 7 a.m. Monday, Sunday night, I'm gonna get it cracking. That was the type of student I was, and it screwed me over sometimes because those databases, it was offline, they're doing maintenance, you're done. You have to email the professor and say, hey, something happened, I need an extension. So is Google knowledge? It's definitely information, and it's vast amounts of information. And remember, information is not the same as knowledge. Knowledge is what you do with information. Some would say no, Google is not knowledge, but I would say it is. There's tons of things we can do and learn online. So for example, you can learn how to fix your car. My car, to replace the AC filter, it was not sold anywhere. I had to go to a like Reddit type page about cars and find other people with the same problem and point me to a filter that was not even listed under my car for a different car, and how to open that and put it in, and it worked. If you want to bake a special cake, hey, zucchini banana bread or whatever crazy cake is on Instagram, the Oreo thing. Oh, you want to play through a video games? I remember I was just seeing this interesting meme on Instagram about Toys R Us in 1990s, and there was a stack of the video game playthrough books. And I remember I was a big Final Fantasy fan, and I wouldn't buy those books. They were kind of expensive at $30. I would go to the library or use my cousin's computer, and I would print. I think I was having my mom print it at her office, like pages of these like walkthroughs for Final Fantasy, and they were in the old type. Like it was nuts. There was no YouTube at that point, so you couldn't like watch somebody. How to apply makeup some way. You have James Charles and all these people who help you, and things like that. Sometimes it's not knowledge. When we go to WebMD versus a real doctor, I'll show you a meme after I tell you the prompt. You ever feel sick for something, you go to WebMD, oh my God, I'm dying. You probably just have like something minor, and you have to go to the real doctor. So here's the prompt for the week 4 activity. Again, here's the prompt. Tell me about a time you went online to learn how to do something. What was it? Was it to fix your car? Was it to play a video game? Was it to learn how to go on vacation somewhere? And did it work, or was it a fail? Did you have to go to a professional? Did you mess up your car? Did you lose the video game? Let me know. And here's the meme. It says, tells WebMD I have an itchy eye. It says I'm pregnant with Ebola. So yeah, WebMD will scare the crap out of you. You should get it checked out by a professional. So breaking apart from the lesson, we're going to talk quickly about citing sources. So in this, as I go forward, I'm using this theoretical example where I put out a report about the dangers of, and I should say TikTok, not TikTok. I know what TikTok is. All right. So quotes, you always need to cite quotes. Quotes always need a citation. And I'm doing it here in the journalist way. You guys know how to do it the APA way. It's a full citation. So here's how to do it. There's 2 ways to use quotes. When somebody said it verbatim, and this would be theoretically what I said. I think TikTok is the most dangerous app of the 21st century, said Professor Pinto at a press conference announcing the release of the report. Another way is when you cite the study itself, you have to use quotations. And if it's longer than a paragraph, you have to indent it. Studies show that 20% of children under 4 years old experience memory loss from, again, I think this is auto-correcting me. It should say TikTok, according to a new report released by, and you say the name of the report, the author, and everything like that. Moving on, when you paraphrase, and sorry, I don't know what's going on with my TikTok here. So when you're not copying word for word or a quote, so there's no quotation marks against this. I just put the star, the asterisk to say what your paper would say. A number of preschool kids were found to have detrimental effects after using TikTok, claims a report by Professor Pinto. Now, when you use data, facts, and info, when you use one source, you have to cite that source. So here's something that theoretical, again, this is all theoretical. It is widely believed that Professor Pinto is in with the Trump administration and released the report as the government looks to block the app, according to an article in the New York Times. Remember, when you use data or info or a fact from one source, you have to cite it. If it's widely known, you don't have to cite it. That's known. So here's another way. The report comes just a few days after the United States proposed a ban of TikTok, I got it right this time, on US app stores such as on Apple and Android. Idea depends, if somebody's idea, if it's my idea, it depends if you want to use a quote or paraphrase, then you follow those examples. Summary is just a longer paraphrase. Again, you cite it as well. And you always have a bibliography at the end. Regardless if you use MLA, APA, whatever, you need to cite your sources in the readings and at the end have a bibliography, especially for the APA format, which we're studying in this class. Note, newspapers don't use the APA reference style. They just reference the source when citing and with a link to original article when available and posting it for the web. So just according to the New York Times. And then if it's online, we'll post a link to that article. That's actually why I got into journalism as a lazy student. I just thought it was way easier to do this stuff. And the old journalist thing is for another class. When in doubt, just cite it. If you don't know if you should do it or not, cite it. You don't want to get in trouble. So I just wanted to go back